I'm worried about the impact of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, the impact of all of those information disorders on democracy. And we've seen that on a number of platforms, including, for example, podcasts like we're here now, where people think that there are no consequences for the things that they say. You can't have kids today who sit as Lalini in Mokopane or wherever, and they cannot have the same opportunities because they can't afford data, or their data is going to expire. They can't afford the devices. If there's anything that we want to be remembered for, the legacy of our portfolio committee is really making a fundamental shift in rural connectivity.
That melodic sound that welcomed us, it's our new sound that introduces us to this brand new space. Welcome to another episode of Gauteng Live, your premier platform where we discuss everything entertainment, the visitor economy, and how it interfaces with the creative economy. And today we are spicing it up. We are pressing the buttons. We are bringing digital technologies. And this comes also at the backdrop of us celebrating South Africa's Women's Month. And it can't get bigger than having a pioneer and a champion of women's rights, young women's rights, as we focus on young women in tourism, young women in digital technologies, and young women in the creative space. My guest, my friend, honorable member, and many others. So it becomes a little bit difficult to, put a straight face having you. But Honorable Diko, Khusela Diko, thank you very much for gracing us on this platform.
Babaji, thank you so much for that beautiful, beautiful introduction. You said there were many others. I'll take a humbled lady right now to have been invited here. So thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, there are many others, including us partying the whole night all in New York at Afropunk, trying to bring bigger events here into Gauteng. And talking about Gauteng, as a young lady, in the Eastern Cape, and there's always been this perception about Gauteng. You remember the naughty Tata Mandela jumping with the brother into that train, and he ended up here. I hope you didn't take that route, but are you able to just shortly take us through that moment when you decided to come to the Golden Province?
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually not too far from Tata Mandela's running away. Hey? So I matriculated in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape, and as is norm, when you finish matric, you then start looking for varsities. Gauteng then, as Gauteng is now, was the home to very premier universities that we aspired to go to. Yeah. Now, growing up in areas like Mthatha, the rural areas of Okolweni and Watwa, to us, coming to Johannesburg in particular was really like going to New York. We dreamed that one day you would leave this province of your birth and travel to Gauteng, because that's where your dreams are supposed to come true. So I arrived here in 1996, I think, exposing my age, to attend the Rand Afrikaanse Universiteit. Yes, it was, as it was called in that time. And I mean, the vibe here, the life here, the culture here, it was, and I think it still remains, it's a very thriving melting pot, of different cultures. All the way up until Standard 9, for example, I'd never met anybody who speaks Sesotho. Yeah. Then we had these two ladies, young girls, who then joined our school coming from Lesotho. Oh, it was the most fascinating thing that we had. Now imagine to arrive here, and you become in the minority. So, it's been quite a journey. So I've been here almost close to 30 years. And I think it's no exaggeration to say I've been bred in Gauteng, if not born.
and battered. Because we go through as young persons, we are landing in here, and you land. So and coming from a space where it's almost a unitary space, same language, same experiences, and you land up here in this multicultural environment. Will I be correct to say that also shaped how you looked at the world, how you look at your role also as an activist, and how that shaped how you then interface not just with your community now, with the rest of the region, with the rest of the country, and the rest of the world?
Most definitely. Most definitely. I don't think that I would even be half the activist that I am had I not had, I think, the exposure and the shock really of a sense that while we are one people, we are not homogeneous, right? We are not the same. When we confine ourselves to certain spaces, that tends to be the one way of looking at things. Those are the things that we understand and we take them to be that. But Gauteng, with its different cultures, with its different languages, which is different life views, has taught me a lot. I mean, I remember while at the Rand Afrikaans University, it was a bit difficult for us. I think as one of the first black cohorts of students there, we could not attend classes during the day because the university was still largely Afrikaans, which meant that there had to be something that was called Raukis, who would only start class after 5:30, and during the day you're watching all these Afrikaans speaking kids going to school, and you have to sit in res if you were lucky enough to get into res. But it afforded us an opportunity to meet people from Soweto, to meet people from Tshwane, Pretoria, to meet people from, we had friends from Hillbrow and things like that. And we got to understand that, in terms of what our life is and the struggles that we face, firstly, I think as Africans in particular, we share the same struggles, but then to also understand that even as we interact with those Afrikaner girls and boys who were at school with us at that time, they may not have an appreciation of what we're going through. So the very next year, I did leave Rao and I went to Tekkies. Specialized in these Afrikaans universities.
I can see.
And I went to the University of Pretoria, where I then joined the ANC Youth League for the first time. We were one of the very first campus branches that was set up. Yeah. And it was there then that we were really able to take forward, I think, the struggles of students in higher education spaces, but also because our mothers were there. They were working as cleaners, some were lecturers, and we again created a vibrant, active student life where all of those issues were brought to the fore. So Gauteng is a place like no other.
Fascinating. And your student life and youth activism, and in a space diverse as this, how that shaped you as you now had to move into higher responsibilities, having to sit in decision-making processes, because I was saying the 8 of the main 13 universities are found here in Gauteng, which effectively make the space very youthful. But does that youthfulness translate into who are now making decisions, positions of leadership, and you had a chance to actually be in that position of leadership? This whole cosmopolitan space and the youth and the youthfulness and the vibrancy, how that translated into positions of leadership and influence the type of leadership at that time and the Gauteng we envisioned. I remember coming in late. I got into the province around 2006, so 10 years after you, and already were working with the Gauteng Shared Services that was integrating programs. We were working on the Gautrain projects, the Blue IQ projects, which in nature, those will have required some fresh and youthful ideas.
You see, what do I say about Gauteng? You see, Gauteng is It's a place of big ideas, right? It's an area that never rests. There's something always happening. I mean, we used to pride ourselves when I was in the Gauteng provincial government that we were the fourth largest economy in Africa then, not South Africa, Gauteng.
Yeah.
So we would always say it's South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, Gauteng, and others, you know.
Yeah.
But in its bigness as well, it's a place that's unforgiving. And if you are going to sit in Gauteng and rest on your laurels and not be part of making this city region what it is, then I do worry sometimes that people get left behind. When you are in Gauteng, I think that there is a call on every young person, every woman to really play their part. Now, I had an opportunity, for example, today just to go around and reconnect, with the city of Joburg in particular through the tour that you had taken us through. And you realize there's so much that we miss out on in our own little spaces where we are not looking at the full tapestry of Johannesburg in particular. I mean, I was blown away by young people who are animating, who are coding. Some of them were just clapping when this thing started. I'm like, what is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's so much that we don't know. And I suppose the point of what I'm trying to say is that there's always something to see, something to do, something to learn in Gauteng. And obviously that then translates into what sort of leadership is then required in such a society. Yeah. I will never on any day be accused by anybody of being an ageist. I do think that there's a role for everybody to play. But then when we push, as we have been doing, I think, as this generation of leadership or even younger leadership, we've always spoken about a need for a generational mix, where you bring together young people with fresh ideas and you still harness the wisdom, of those who are a lot more experienced than us in certain spaces. A personal gripe that I have, is when you bring in young people into leadership and then they arrive there and they become part of the furniture. Yeah. And nothing changes. You don't have a sense of any shift. And you ask yourself, but then what is the point of having you there? And I suppose it's these contradictions that we must always talk about, because you cannot always hope that a woman in a position is necessarily going to be feminist in her outlook, in the same way that you cannot take it for granted that young people themselves are necessarily progressive. But that mix is difficult. I mean, you can't lead people that you cannot relate with. It just does not work. So I'm glad that I think that Gauteng over the years, we had one sort of rupture in terms of leadership, but over the years we've maintained a steady flow of the young coming in, the older leaders also retiring gracefully, and I think that that's something that we need to maintain.
100%. And now let's bring it closer to the current responsibilities. And so apart from chairing the portfolio committee and going through the length and breadth of the country, forcing telcons to comply and come to the party, do developmental, before we go there, in this rapid world of misinformation, where nonsense is normalized, where there's breaking news every minute, and just so much information and misinformation that is out there. What makes you not sleep at night, looking at this environment that we find ourselves, and also appreciating that this democratic South Africa is only 31 years old. It has not come out of a youthful age.
Baba, I'm worried about the impact of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, the impact of all of those information disorders on democracy. I think that we have lost the ability to ensure that people have access to information that is reliable, that is factual, that is timely. I mean, just yesterday I was looking at yet something else that is fake news, which is presented as being fact. And I'm worried, and this is something that we have raised with the ministers, in fact, the two ministers, one in the presidency responsible for communication and the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, to say that we don't think that government has a solution, or at least that solution is not being implemented quick enough. We have participated, for example, in Parliament on a number of symposia speaking about internet governance. So there's an issue that has to be dealt with in terms of platform accountability. You can't have the likes of your Twitters, your YouTubes, everybody else, Meta, and that's a separate case altogether. But those platforms need to be accountable for what goes onto their platforms. They cannot want to keep an arm's length type of approach to what is going on there. And at this point in time, we are looking at legislation, regulation, some sort of measures that are going to make them accountable. It's not unique to South Africa. Many other jurisdictions do it. But secondly, I'm worried about the extent to which we seem to construe freedom of speech to mean anything goes. Yeah. It can't be that anything goes. We are a law-governed society. Our constitution provides our platform for coexistence. And in that constitution, it speaks about the right to freedom of speech, but it also speaks about the right to dignity, to equality. And you cannot have one right superseding the other. And we've seen that on a number of platforms, including, for example, podcasts like we're here now, where people think that there are no consequences for the things that they say, things that are harmful, hurtful to other individuals. And we have raised a discussion around the need to perhaps regulate that space as well. And the common refrain I always get to that is, oh, no, now this government, they want to shut us down. We love creativity. We want South Africans to express themselves. But as they do that, they need to respect the rights of others. Now, we've already seen a number of models of regulation in this country, both co-regulation and self-regulation. You have a press council that has nothing to do with government. It's chaired by a retired judge. The media houses come together, agree on a code of ethics or good practice, similarly with the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. So there is work in trying to deal with that. When all else fails, we do need to revert to laws like our cybersecurity laws, which may be tightened for certain criminal conduct that must be dealt with. But at the end of the day, we can't allow a lawless society, and we also can't make it difficult for people who have been wronged to seek justice, because not all of us must have got the money to approach the courts, criminal injuria, defamation cases. So those safeguards need to be created.
And how does this also, because, we can put laws, we can put many regulations, but how does this dive back to our families, which are nuclear families also? We all complain there's criminals, but as if they are staying in trees and not in our own houses. Hardly you see families exposing the road in their own space. And now with the digital advancement, the last time we checked was a household in South Africa has a minimum of 5 smartphones. Yeah. Apart from other devices. That in itself shows the progress we've made. But there have been, the unintended consequences of actually the platforms and the channels and the tools being available. And you see somebody arrested with thousands and thousands of child pornographic material, which dials down to our own society and our own community. For those that are watching all over, and especially in South Africa, as families, as it starts with us in the families, your message to them?
Parenting in the digital world, Baba, is no different from parenting in life as we know it. I think that the fact that our children today have access to gadget, unlimited access to the internet, is no different from the first time they were introduced to television, to radio, and any other mediums that were used before. Parents need to continue to be responsible. As much as we can expect that society as a whole, government included, will do its best to mitigate these online harms, but the parents need to be responsible. I like your example about how people don't fall from the air, they come from somewhere, you know. One of the things that we used to say, especially in the ANC, when we were grappling with the challenges of in the ANC, whether it's morality or this or the other thing, is that unfortunately the ANC and maybe many other organizations are a microcosm of society. They show you what is happening in society. And I mean, not to be defensive, but I remember it was one of our leaders who used to say, but we get them when they are 18. So when they come to us, who was there before?
Yes.
You know what I mean? In the context of this debate.
Yeah.
So your schools need to be there. Your religious organizations need to be there. Families, the family structure is very important. I think that, you know, when there's nothing that the rest of society is ever going to get right when the home didn't get right. We do understand, obviously, that there's challenges. I mean, parents are busy. They're overwhelmed themselves. And that's why then I think it's important that we support wherever we can. One of the agencies that we have oversight of, it's the Film and Publication Board, which is obviously responsible for it's not censorship, but for regulating classification of content. We have agencies such as NEMISA, which are responsible for digital skills training, which amongst others would speak to these issues of online harms. So it is an all of society approach.
And to what extent does this now dovetail to, you know, all the components? While there is so much, and it's a chronic challenge of youth unemployment, the lack of the relevant skills, but to what extent, when you concentrate on that, you ensure that you don't neglect the other component, so that we will have a highly digitalized children and youth population, and the parents are not. And they will then end up showing you what they want you to see. I dream of an environment where, as parents parenting in our home, we're able to do certain things, shows, this homeworks, show and tell, punch it, send it to the electronic board at the school. And at the school, when they open it, they are not worried that it's from one teacher's machine, and they might have been recording other sensory things there that shows up as the kids are in classroom. So a digitally connected space that appreciate the environment, that they are all this. But how do we then bridge that divide? I grew up in a space where there used to be this thing called night school. And night school was for the elders. But I don't think we have night schools anymore. So how do we get our parents, you know, to be able to get in? But now it's young parents, so that this digital ecosystem is actually used for the benefit of what is it, and you are able to actually appreciate the integration that digital gives you.
Yeah, I know there are some people who call themselves BBT, born before technology.
Yes, you know?
It's not new challenges that we're facing, Baba. If you remember, when you were younger, you used to lie to your parents and say, you are going on a trip of photosynthesis. So kids do that, right? So kids do that. They'll always look for ways, you know, that their world affords them that perhaps their parents didn't. But as we said before, parents do have a responsibility to understand and appreciate what it is that their children are doing on a daily basis. We also maintain that while we call for digital first, it should not be digital only. To ensure that nobody is left behind, whether it is the teachers, whether it's students, or even those who don't have access to technology. And that's a big thing for us in the Portfolio Committee. I think that if there's anything that we want to be remembered for, the legacy of our Portfolio Committee is really making a fundamental shift in rural connectivity in particular. You can't have kids today who sit as Lalini in Mokopane or wherever, and they cannot have the same opportunities because they can't afford data, or their data is going to expire, they can't afford the devices. And that entire value chain, if I can call it, is what is going to make a difference in the country. And we're hoping that by doing that, then we're open up opportunities not only for education, but also for entrepreneurship.
Right.
You know, where a young person in Lusikisiki is able to sit there, like we saw when we went there recently. You know, they're able to sell their tomatoes erengin, where ordinarily the people who would know that there's a young person selling those tomatoes erengin was somebody who was going there. But now because he's got access to technology, he can post it on Facebook, then other people in the town know that there's an entrepreneur there. So that's how we are looking at this and hoping to take it forward.
And I guess that the responsibility of the portfolio committee to socialize this and create awareness, and you are better placed to interface with the constituencies that you represent there in Parliament. The activism and the people's activism, and especially young startups that are there, podcasters that are there, creators that are there, your views on how organized they are in making a collective input to platforms like the portfolio committee than individuals who might have their own intentions or been sponsored by somebody else, such that the data issue and expiry of data is not an individual thing, it's a collective thing. If all of a sudden my data have expired and I have electronic textbook, I'm now unable to then start reading. And the ability to have a collective voice from everybody in the value chain, for me, is quite crucial. And how does the portfolio committee provide avenues for such?
I think that this is one of the biggest challenges of our democracy. Remember, we said our democracy is representative and is participatory. Now, representative, you'll have people like me, Khusela, that you've elected to represent you in Parliament. All well and good. Across political lines, I think MPs are doing their work in raising the issues that the people raise with them directly. However, in terms of the participatory element of democracy, we're not seeing as much. So I have never, I stand to be corrected, as the chair of the committee, I don't ever remember receiving any submission, from either podcasters, from digital startups, from anybody saying, portfolio committee, help us with this matter, to be fair, I do get letters from individual companies who are struggling with a Goliath of a multinational corporation. They need Parliament to step in, and in those cases, we always do our best. But I don't get that to a large extent, South Africans have understood the role of Parliament beyond lawmaking, ensuring that it's able to hold accountable whoever needs to be held accountable. You mentioned in passing that we had recently called to Parliament the mobile network operators. So we had MTN, Telkom, Rain, Cell C, Liquid Technologies and Vodacom in Parliament. And we were saying to them, listen, the people are saying, Nina, the people have gotten to a point where they think it's normal to say, no, where I'm driving, there's no network. Okay. How can that be when you have licenses that compel you to ensure a certain quality of service? Yes. But what we wanted to do there, going back also to your digital startup question, because I'm passionate about that, but I don't know where to find them. I don't know where these digital startups are supposed to be.
There it is, guys. The chair wants you. So,
of course, we do. Yeah. We don't know. I mean, I reached out to recently, I think a company called 22 on Sloan, been trying to engage with the Department of Small Business to find out, do we have an ecosystem that supports digital startups? Yeah. We're speaking to the Innovation Hub. We've reached out to the Technology Innovation Agency because we want to be able to hold government accountable, right? Absolutely. And say, okay, so when I graduate, I am now a software developer. Is there a process for me? Can I be taken through something to ultimately end up at the end? And my thing, Baba, is that these startups, they're designed to fail. They're going to fail. And we must give them the opportunity to fail as many times, because by doing that, then they're innovating and they're trying. And that obviously needs money and resources, which is why we're trying to speak to the MNOs and say, no, guys, you're doing great work. Vodacom with your foundation, your ESD programs. But have you guys ever thought about collaborating intentionally right?
Absolutely.
Because everybody is building this center, doing that. But if there was an intentional agreement amongst yourselves that we're going to put a software developer in every home, then you channel your monies to that. If we're going to ensure that our innovation and incubation system works properly, then we do that, not necessarily just wanting to shine as different companies. But it's work in progress. And as I'm saying, we wish we could hear a lot more from those entities.
That's why we bring platforms like this, and I guess from the talk today, you'll have seen the interface between tourism, the visitor economy, arts, the creator space. You went to a music studio, a Flame studio, Alicia Keys design, Vusima Khusela programmed, type of interface. And in the same spirit where you are calling for collaboration by the telcons and everybody, to what extent are the portfolio committees themselves collaborating? And I'm a marketer myself. I'm a sucker for partner marketing because we are able to bring different capabilities. But you are also to have another one that looks at the blind spots, because you can't always be correct. Somebody must be able to say. So am I too far envisioning a communications and digital technologies committee that interface with the tourism portfolio committee and the creative sector or arts and culture committee and a sports community? I always say, so there's the executive, there's the judiciary, there's the legislative, and there's the fourth estate, which is the media, and the fifth estate is the sports entertainment sector. So I call them the fifth estate. The fifth estate, because they influence. We've seen Siya Kolisi getting a deal. We've seen his influence as not just a sports person. Now it interfaces. We've seen emergence of businesses in this specific space. So am I too far when I'm expecting this type of collaboration at a level of portfolio committees, so that when policies and laws are being passed, but as you hold government accountable, it's also done in an integrated manner where we are able to use economics of scales?
It should be. It should be. It's not happening as much. I'll be honest, I think until I had interactions with the Gauteng Tourism Authority, I had never consciously thought of the interface between tourism, digital technology, economic development, arts and culture in general. And I think I have come to see it come alive in Gauteng. I mean, we do have instances where we do have collaborations, which are usually driven by Parliament. Our Parliament has adopted a posture of being very activist, very interventionist. So we don't sit and wait for government and say, government will provide. We are lawmakers in our own right. In fact, we have the primary mandate of lawmaking, and where necessary, we will intervene with the necessary laws that the executive, in line with their mandate, must execute. In a different capacity, at the NGO called the African National Congress. Interestingly, in a few days' time, we are holding a workshop. Which workshop is going to cover? It was born out of our Arts and Culture Subcommittee, and looking particularly at the plight of artists when it comes to the two bills around the Performers' Rights Bill as well as the Copyright Amendment Bill. And we said this issue is a trade and industry issue because it deals with issues of intellectual property, but this is our constituency as arts and culture, and therefore we need to stand up for those artists. And then in the capacity as communications and digital technologies chair, I've been asked now to come and speak on the policy of the audio and audiovisual white paper, which is a policy paper that seeks to regulate that industry. So they do collide, and sometimes beautifully so. And I think what we're going to have to do is to take more of an effort to reimagine, Baba, because while the reason why these things are not obvious is because we have not reimagined the sort of society we want to build. I mean, I always argue to the Minister of Communications that, Chief, where are you taking us? Can you tell us? Because we should have a digital technology strategy in this country, which is going to bring in education, health, arts and culture. And therefore, when we can see the entire ecosystem, then it's easy to pick up the linkages. I mean, right now, our focus is at the most basic level around connectivity. We still haven't come to what must overlay it, what sort of apps must we have, how do we do the things that you are doing now? I mean, you're speaking about a totally new, different industry of gaming, which I had never thought about, you know what I mean? So once we've got that strategy right, then we must have the right people around the table to implement it.
Absolutely. As we now wrap up, and speaking of the artist and music, so this destination, it's a music, lifestyle, entertainment destination. The conquering sounds of Amapiano are born here. So, your favorite song that you think is a true representation of Gauteng?
Chief, that's an easy one. Go, music and lights. You know that song. That's the one. That song does it for me every time. I mean, I know. WHP comes from Northwest, no?
Yeah,
He comes from Northwest, but the way that he was able to, firstly, just by coming from the Northwest, bring in that cosmopolitan vibe that we were talking about, then celebrating the essence of Gauteng's place that is literally music and life, Gauteng Maboneng, you know. For me, that does it every time.
Well, music and lights is a place of lights, a place of music, a destination where gold is no longer underneath, but gold is found in the 15.5 million people in this destination. Don't forget to follow us at Visit Gauteng on Twitter, at Visit Gauteng on Instagram, and also on TikToking. We are also available in the digital platform with what's on G Magazine. We are also at I Love Gauteng on Facebook. Don't forget to subscribe. And myself, Barba Gaoganediwe, your champion host. It has been a fascinating and thrilling and empowering episode. Honorable Khusela Diko, thank you very much for gracing our shows, and we wish you and your portfolio committee all the best. And as they say, it starts here in Gauteng when we were able to integrate and pioneer forward. We're hoping Parliament committees will also integrate, and we will be available to share some of the challenges. But once again, thank you very much for gracing the show.
Thank you so much for having me.